"We don't want a plumber at dinner," my brother said, blocking the doorway with his shoulder like he owned Christmas. Behind him, silverware clinked and laughter spilled from the dining room. The kind that doesn't invite you in, it brushes you off like lint. It's funny how the cold doesn't bite as hard as being told you don't belong. Snow hissed in the porch light, melting on the back of my neck. Somewhere inside, carols played off-key, and the smell of glazed ham mixed with the sharp sting of pine and lemon cleaner. My family loves things that look clean. They've never been good at fixing what leaks underneath. "Hi everyone, my name is Keely Rowan, and I learned early that some pipes burst quietly. No water, just dignity running down to wherever the house hides its rot. I didn't come for their warmth. I came to see what kind of cracks winter had carved into the people who taught me to be useful only when something was broken." "Move," I said, soft enough to sound like a joke and not a plea. He didn't. He smirked, then stepped aside just far enough for me to slip past with my thrift store coat and the neat red-wrapped boxes tucked under my arm. Living room lights gilded the tinsel, the tree blinking like a heartbeat you're trying to slow down. Mom hovered by the table with Dad. Both glanced up then down like they'd already rehearsed this scene and didn't want improvisation. "Look who's home," Dad said, as if the word home didn't taste like copper in my mouth. The place looked the same. Family portraits, award plaques, that heavy clock that pretends time is generous. I counted seats. I counted forks. I counted how many times I'd swallowed hard in this house and called it gratitude. We ate. Or rather, they performed eating. My brother told stories that weren't his, dressed in confidence he didn't pay for. Mom laughed on cue. Dad poured wine and let it bloom into the air. Nobody asked about my week or the smell of solder that clung to my hands or why my cuticles bled. They did, however, nudge a square package my way, paper patterned with Santa hats and a tag that said, "For our fixer." I peeled it open. A toolbox. Bright. Shiny enough to see my eyes framed in red and green. "For the one without a family," I joked, and they laughed too loudly, relieved I'd saved them the labor of cruelty. I smiled back, set the box down gently and slid my 3 gifts beneath the tree. One for each of them, labels facing out like door plates. Not every leak screams when it starts. Some just spread, silent as melted snow, until the foundation feels it. Tonight the pressure was theirs. The room turned syrupy with silence when I pushed their gifts toward them. My brother tore into his first, eager, greedy, like he always had been. But instead of electronics or clothes, he found a thick envelope with his name typed bold across it. His smirk faltered. Pages slid out. Overdue notices, credit card bills, loan rejections. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, voice cracking into the laughter he couldn't find. "Plumbing," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Fixing leaks you all pretend don't exist." Mom's fingers twitched before she even touched her own package. She unwrapped it slower, dread creeping in like frost on a window pane. Her pile was heavier. Stacks of unpaid property taxes, insurance lapses, even the loan Dad took out against his pension. Dad's turn was last. He ripped the paper in one quick motion, trying to look unfazed. But when the folder snapped open, his face dropped gray like cement setting too fast. Collection letters. Final notices. The kind of words that don't sound like words at all. They sound like shackles. "You've been in my mail," Dad said, quiet as a warning. I met his eyes. "You left it all dripping." I just carried the bucket. The air thickened. No clinking forks now. No carols humming from the speakers. Just the ugly breathing of a family caught naked under fluorescent light. My brother shoved his papers away, laughter trying to crawl back into his throat but choking on itself. "You think this makes you better than us? You're still the plumber. The hired help. Always under us." Something in me stilled. His words didn't sting the way he wanted. They rang hollow like tapping on an empty pipe. No water left, just echoes. I sipped my water slow. Let the silence stretch until even the clock above the mantel ticked too loud. "Maybe," I said, setting the glass down, "but at least I know how to shut the system off." And for the first time that night I saw fear bleed into their eyes, faint but undeniable, like the drip before the flood. Dad pushed back from the table so hard his chair screeched against the hardwood, the sound like a blade across metal. His jaw flexed, eyes narrowing into the kind of stare he used to silence me when I was a child. But I wasn't a child anymore. "You went through our things," he said, his voice low, a slow boil. "No," I replied, steady. Your things spilled into the world. You just didn't bother mopping up. Mom's wine glass trembled in her hand. She set it down carefully like one wrong move might shatter more than the glass. My brother scoffed, trying to salvage control. God, Keely, you think you're clever? Walking in here with your little revenge gifts? It's pathetic. Pathetic. That word always found me in this house. Pathetic when I couldn't afford college. Pathetic when I worked double shifts fixing pipes instead of shaking hands in boardrooms. Pathetic when I came home with dirt under my nails instead of polished rings on my fingers. But I wasn't the one drowning in overdue bills. Funny, I whispered, leaning forward. Pathetic is watching your whole life crack while you're too busy laughing at me to hear the walls groan. My brother's face flushed red, but he didn't speak. Mom reached for Dad's arm, whispering something I couldn't catch, her lips pale, trembling. Dad ignored her, eyes pinned to me like I was a threat he couldn't name. The lights above flickered once, just a surge from the heater kicking on, but the timing was perfect. Shadows bent across their faces, deepening the fear they wouldn't admit. This is Christmas, Mom finally said, her voice shaking. We're supposed to celebrate, not? Not what? I cut in. Not notice the rot? Her silence was answer enough. I stood slowly, my chair creaking back. The weight of the toolbox at my feet felt heavier now, not as a joke but as proof. Proof they'd tried to define me by what I fix, what I patch, what I hold together with my hands. But tonight I wasn't their plumber. I was the one who turned off the main valve and left them sitting in the silence of pipes that would never run again. And in that silence, for the first time, I wasn't the broken one. My brother shoved his chair back so violently it toppled over, crashing to the floor. You don't get to humiliate us in our own house. His voice cracked, half anger, half desperation. I didn't flinch. The storm had already broken inside me years ago. Tonight was just the lightning finding its target. I bent down, picked up the shiny red toolbox they'd given me, and set it gently on the table between the half-eaten dishes and their piles of debt. The metal lid snapped shut with a hollow clang that echoed through the dining room. You think this is humiliation? I asked, my voice calm enough to chill the air. This is the truth, wrapped in paper you can't tear away from. Dad's face twisted, his lips trembling like he wanted to roar but couldn't find the strength. He looked smaller suddenly, shoulders hunched as if the weight of the documents pressed down on him physically. Mom's mascara had smudged under her eyes, tears she didn't want me to see staining her carefully powdered skin. You've ruined Christmas, she whispered. No, I corrected. You ruined it years ago, every time you reminded me I wasn't enough. Every time you laughed at grease under my nails or called me a burden because I fixed toilets instead of chasing titles. Tonight I just gave you the mirror. The clock ticked louder, second by second, until the silence wrapped tight around all of us. My brother finally muttered, You're nothing, Keely. Always will be. I stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat bead at his temple. Nothing. I said softly. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one in this house holding all the power right now? His throat bobbed, but no words came. I leaned down, whispered just loud enough for all of them to hear. You gave me tools for Christmas. Maybe that was the only honest gift you've ever given me. Because I know how to use them, not just on pipes but on people who think they're untouchable. The lights flickered again, and in that trembling glow, their faces finally showed what I had been waiting for all night. Fear disguised as contempt, shame dressed as pride. And for the first time I felt the crack in their fortress. The silence stretched so long it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. The tree lights blinked in lazy rhythm, casting reds and greens across their pale faces. My brother's fists tightened at his sides, but he didn't swing. He wasn't brave, never was. He liked his cruelty in safe doses, delivered through jokes at the table, through smirks when I came home late smelling of copper and rust. But real confrontation? That terrified him. Dad finally broke the silence, his voice gravelly. You think you've won something here? Airing our dirty laundry in front of... He gestured vaguely, though no one else was there. Maybe he imagined an audience. Maybe the idea of being exposed was worse than actually being caught. I tilted my head. I don't need to air it. It's already drowning you. I just turned the light on. Mom let out a sob she tried to swallow, pressing her napkin hard against her lips. The sight should have broken me. Once it would have. But tonight I saw it for what it was. The same performance she'd used to excuse their neglect. Tears for pity, not for change. I leaned on the table, steady, deliberate. You spent years making sure I knew my place. Fixing leaks, unclogging drains, cleaning up after messes no one else wanted to touch. Tonight, I'm giving you the gift of finally seeing your own mess. My brother barked a laugh, brittle and sharp. What, you expect us to thank you? To bow down because you printed a bunch of bills? I smiled, slow, almost tender. No. I don't expect thanks. I expect silence. I expect you to sit here and realize that the plumber you mocked is the only one who knows how deep your cracks go. The air shifted. The heater clicked off, leaving the room colder, quieter. Dad's hand trembled as he reached for his glass, the wine swirling like blood in the dim light. You've forgotten something, I added, my voice barely above a whisper. Plumbing isn't just about fixing leaks. It's about shutting things off before the whole house floods. And when I said it, I saw it land. Their eyes darted to one another, fear thick as smoke. For once they weren't laughing. And I knew then I wasn't finished. This was only the beginning of their Christmas. The fire in the hearth popped, spitting sparks that faded before they reached the rug. No one moved. My brother's hands hovered over the bills like they might catch fire, like touching them would make the debt more real. Mom stared at me, her lips parted, searching for a script that didn't exist. Dad finally set his glass down, slow and careful, as if even the stem might betray him. You think you hold the cards, he said, voice brittle. But this house, this family, we've survived worse. I stepped closer, the old floorboards groaning under my boots. Survived? You call leeching off credit and pretending at Christmas survival? You call laughing at your daughter while she patched strangers' pipes to keep her lights on survival? The words poured from me sharper than I expected, but I didn't stop. I fixed homes where fathers stayed, where brothers carried boxes side by side, where mothers didn't turn their children into punchlines. And every night I walked back into my one-room apartment and thought maybe one day they'll see me. Maybe one day they'll invite me in without the jokes. My throat burned, but I didn't let them see it. Tonight I learned the truth. You only wanted me around when you needed something patched. Not when I needed to belong. Mom whispered, "Tilly," soft, almost human, but too late. I straightened, cold settling into my spine like armor. So here's my gift. You don't need to pretend anymore. You don't have to call me family while treating me like labor. Their eyes widened as I reached into my bag and placed a final envelope on the table. Different from the rest. This one thick with signatures stamped official in black ink. My brother reached for it first, but I caught his wrist midair, holding his gaze until his bravado cracked. Then I slid it to Dad. Open it. He did, hands shaking. His eyes skimmed the papers, then froze. I watched the blood drain from his face as the reality sank in. Foreclosure notices. Bank withdrawal records. Every hidden corner of their foundation exposed. The clock ticked once, twice, like a gavel. And for the first time in my life I wasn't outside their door. I was the storm battering it down. Dad's lips moved, but no sound came out. His fingers clutched the foreclosure papers like they might dissolve if he let go. My brother leaned over his shoulder, eyes darting line by line, and then he shoved the folder back as if it had burned him. What did you do? He hissed, his voice strangled. I stayed perfectly still, letting the weight of the silence do its work. The tree lights blinked again, garish reds and greens painting their faces with the irony of festivity. I could almost laugh. You left the valves open, I said quietly. I just pointed out the water rushing in. You had no right. Mom's voice cracked like glass. She stood suddenly, napkin clutched tight in her fist. This is private. You're cruel, Keely. You're spiteful. We raised you, we gave you. Gave me. The word clawed out of my throat like a laugh gone wrong. You gave me mockery. You gave me locked doors. You gave me a toolbox for Christmas when all I ever wanted was to be let in without a joke at my expense. The room trembled under the silence that followed. Dad finally slammed the papers down, his face gray and hollow. You think this makes you powerful? You're still alone. When the lights go out, when the snow buries your little apartment, you'll still have no one. I leaned forward, close enough to see the cracked veins in his eyes. No, Dad. When the lights go out, I'll know I earned every bulb that stayed on. I'll know I fixed my own leaks instead of drowning in denial. Alone isn't the same as empty. But you're full of everything that's about to crush you. My brother opened his mouth to spit venom, but nothing came. His tongue was tied by the weight of their unraveling. I picked up the shiny toolbox again, holding it like a trophy they never meant to give. You thought this was an insult. Turns out it's prophecy. Because tonight I'm the only one in this house who knows how to survive collapse. And when I turned toward the door, their faces followed me, not with hate, not with pride, but with the one thing they'd never given me before: fear. The cold night air wrapped around me as I stepped back onto the porch, toolbox in hand, the sound of their silence still echoing behind me. Snowflakes clung to my lashes, softer than any touch I'd ever been given in that house. For a moment I just stood there, breathing in the winter, tasting freedom sharper than the frost. Through the window I saw them frozen at the table, my brother's jaw tight, mom's tears streaking, dad's staring at the bills like they were execution orders. They had laughed at me, mocked me, turned me into their holiday entertainment. And now their Christmas had become a reckoning. I thought about all the nights I came home late, back aching from bending under sinks, grease staining my hands, wondering if dignity could be soldered back together the way copper pipes could. Tonight I had my answer. Dignity isn't given. It's taken back piece by piece until the leaks stop and the system holds. I set the toolbox down gently on their doorstep like an offering. Not for them to use, no, they'd never know how. But as a reminder. A reminder that the one they laughed at was the one who could tear the whole illusion apart. I walked down their driveway, boots crunching in fresh snow, my shadow long in the glow of their Christmas lights. Behind me the house stood still, no laughter spilling out, no warmth radiating through the glass. Just the heavy, suffocating quiet of truth finally laid bare. For years I thought revenge had to be loud, fiery, destructive. But standing there under the frozen sky, I realized the most poetic revenge was silence. The kind that seeps into every corner of their lives, reminding them every Christmas, every dinner, every bill, that the plumber they mocked was the one who shut their water off. I didn't need their acceptance. I didn't need their love. What I needed I had already taken. The last laugh, carved into memory like ice that never melts. And as I walked away, the only sound was the crunch of snow beneath my boots and the faint tick of their clock, counting down to a future they could no longer afford.